Welcome to the Find Creative Expression podcast, conversations about art and creativity. I'm your host, Sarah Crawford, author, musician, and playwright. You can find the show notes and other information at findcreativeexpression.com. And let's get going. Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 12 of the Find Creative Expression podcast. Coming up a little bit later, I have an interview with author and graphic designer Amber Hansford. I had a lot of fun talking to Amber, so you definitely want to stick around and check that out. As far as what's been going on with me, it's the week of Christmas. Merry Christmas Eve to those who celebrate. And, I haven't been very creatively productive this week or really even this month. So, I've kind of just come to accept that this podcast is my creative outlet right now. I have been doing morning pages, as I talked about with Lori last week, the exercise where you kind of just clear your head and write, for 15 minutes every morning. I didn't do it this morning, but I have been doing it. And that's been cool. It's not like I'm not writing, I write in my journal, I write for work. I'm a freelance writer, so I get paid to write. I'm writing about stuff that I wouldn't write about in my own time, but I'm still writing. So it's not like I'm just sitting around doing nothing. Also, I'm making a bunch of gingerbread cookies today, and I'm gonna try to make them look like different artists. Like I'm gonna do a Morrissey gingerbread cookie and like a Billy Corgan gingerbread cookie, maybe like a Bjork. I don't know. I don't really know how I would do Bjork. Maybe the swan dress. I can't do a swan probably. Anyway, so yeah, maybe that's just how I am expressing my creativity right now. And maybe that's okay. Been a hard year. The holidays have kind of made it more stressful and more weird because, I usually do a lot of like family stuff and traditional, like my family, we have all these traditions, like my mom and me usually go see the Nutcracker. We usually watch Christmas movies together. Maybe we'll go see lights or, go see It's a Wonderful Life at the Strand or, like they might have events where you drink hot chocolate and make s'mores or, whatever it is. Like there's always stuff that we find to do. And, I haven't been able to do any of that this year. Luckily, I am going to be able to go to my parents' house for actual Christmas tomorrow. So that's good. So I'm trying to just sort of focus on the positive. The vaccine is coming. One of my nurse friends actually already got the vaccine. And, so I have high hopes that that's going to turn things around whenever we can finally get it. And I guess we just gotta, stick it out until then. And, I know we all have pandemic fatigue. My advice to creative people would be to just, find projects where you can be creative. Maybe it's not writing or music or, whatever you normally do. Maybe it's just making gingerbread cookies or coloring in a coloring book or singing in the shower. It doesn't have to be like this big, grand production because you might not just have the mental energy for big, grand productions right now. And that's okay, You can be creative without having to do something that you could potentially sell, Like maybe you can write in your journal. Maybe you can just be crafty. Maybe just make a collage or, make a digital collage. Like make an Instagram post. Whatever it is. It's like there are a lot of different ways to express your creativity. So I encourage you all to do that. All right, that's enough from me. So let's go ahead and get into the interview. Hey everyone, I am here today with Amber Hansford. Amber Hansford is an author of romantic suspense and young adult contemporary romance. She's also a UX manager by day, as well as a freelance web designer and singer. She has participated in National Novel Writing Month every year since 2003, and she is a member of the writing group called Atlanta Writes. Welcome, Amber.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much. It's a real pleasure. I've been kind of deep diving into this podcast, and it's really, really fun and interesting.
Oh, cool. Yeah, thanks for joining us on Find Creative Expression, episode 12. I don't know why I always say us, because it's just me, but so how did you get into writing?
It has always been in the back or the front of my life. I grew up for the first 9 years of my life in a very loud, very boisterous house, living with my mom, her sisters, her brother, and her parents. And then when I was 9, she met and we moved in with my stepfather, who happened to work for the U.S. Navy.
Cool.
And we moved from Tidewater, Virginia up to Connecticut in the middle of January, all by my lonesome. And writing really became like my best friend. I was a bit, I guess you could call it terminally shy with people who weren't blood related to me. And when I was little, it wasn't that hard to be that loud and outgoing person that most people actually know me as right now. But it took effort when I was a kid to talk to people. And so I just kind of really leaned hard into writing. As I got older and hit my teen years, I was a bit of a hellion. So it kind of faded to the background again. And then, the internet happened and IRC and fanfic and, all of that came back into my life. And I really, ever since then, I've been so deeply enmeshed with writing being my primary kind of outlet. I joke around that I'm really only good at my core in fine arts and history. And, writing just has come to the fore for the last 20 years.
Right. Well, I feel like it's all related. I feel like writing and history, there's a lot of common ground there,
At least, I have just a slightly different view of what, publish or die means.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I have you ever used the software Write or Die?
Yes.
Yes. So you could maybe take it a little literally, but
yeah, it got me through the humps a few nanos. I've been doing NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month, since 2003. So some years I fail, some years I don't. Write or Die usually comes into play when I start feeling the twitch.
That's impressive. I always get 10,000 words in and then something happens. And, I'm like, whatever, I'll just do it next year.
With Nano, I've started in the last few years, I took some of the stress off of myself. I treat Nano like a litmus test. I'll have ideas just sitting in a folder of, oh yeah, I'm going to write those one day. Mm-hmm. I'm going to write those one day. And now I'll just take it and go, okay, if I can get 50,000 words out of this idea, it's worthwhile. And if I can't, it's not that I failed Nano. It's the fact that idea didn't have legs.
Right. So how did you get into graphic design?
I was a complete Luddite for most of my teens. I kind of came late to the game when it came to the internet. Mm-hmm. Now, mind you, I'm saying this, I'm 46 years old. Mm-hmm. So this was, in the mid to late 90s. But I had worked years and years of retail all through college and all that. And a little internet service provider in the tiny little South Georgia town that I was in was looking for a customer service person. They're like, we can teach you anything tech. We just need somebody who can smile and nod as people are yelling at them. And I'm like, I was being paid 10 cents over minimum wage to have people yell at me. It's all good. And while I was there, one of the owners was also the primary webmaster, and he needed a logo sketched out. And I was like, oh hell, I can draw that. And so I sketched it out for him. He threw it in the scanner, and then he opened up like the program I can point to that changed my career, Photoshop 4.
Oh, yeah.
And, after that, you really just couldn't get me off of a computer. I was constantly drawing, whether it be mouse or then trackpads, and then, the holy grail of a Wacom tablet. Mm-hmm. And I kind of then, leaned into the fact that I give off drawings, or graphics to folks, and then they build a website, but it wouldn't be the way that I wanted it built.
Right.
So I turned around and I started learning HTML and CSS and PHP, and ended up moving from that tiny little South Georgia town back in 2006 up to Atlanta, and worked at Turner Broadcasting, in particular in their sports division, as a primary front-end developer for NBA.com and PGA Tour. But
cool.
I was always like, these are my tools, these are my paintbrushes. It just happens to be code.
Yeah. No, that's cool. So, I think you're like me in that you can't really just pick one thing. You're an author, a singer, a designer, a coder. You wear a lot of hats. So which hat have you been wearing like the most recently?
I am knee deep in final edits for my romantic suspense novel, which will be my first self-publish through the lens. So writing has definitely taken, a front seat in my too much gene, as I refer to it. Sometimes when I'm feeling fancy, I call myself a polymath.
Right. Yeah. No, I like that one too. That's I say Renaissance woman sometimes, but people are like, that's pretentious.
I feel that. I actually, one of my exes used to laugh at me and kind of make fun. And he's like, why do you use 50-cent words? I was like, why do you call them 50-cent words? They're just words.
So you're mainly working as a writer right now, like that's kind of where your focus is?
Yeah, that's really much where my primary kind of me time comes from. With my day job as a user experience manager, I've also kind of really fallen in love with teaching and mentoring. I don't really get to do a lot of day-to-day designing anymore with my day job because I manage a team of 6. But I've found that, it's okay to step away.
Right.
And, watching them kind of, expand their skill sets and get to play in, things that maybe, somebody else wouldn't let them, get a chance to, has really, it's become my jam at work.
Right. That's cool. So do you feel like you have to kind of shift your brain into a different mindset if you're being creative versus technical?
With that, it used to be a lot harder, to be honest. When I was a developer for my primary day job, I was there to provide the solution. And so that was very, very tactical, very, okay, this is what I was given and this is what I need to create. And then, I kind of left the writing and the drawing and the singing, as my true creative outlets. And then about 15 years into my career, I moved over to the business side for my day job and became a product manager. And the first few months were awful. I constantly was telling developers how to do things. Do it this way. Do it this way. This is the way I do it. Do it this way. And everybody, of course, was like, why are you telling me how to do my job? And I was talking with one of the other product folk one day at lunch, and I'm like, why is this so hard for me to turn this off in my brain of fixing it?
Mhm.
And they're like, okay, he's like, I deal in analogies. I've turned it off that way by dealing with analogies. I'm telling them the what and the why so they can figure out the how by using, pure, unadulterated, nothing to do with whatever we were building analogies. And I took that and ran.
Mhm.
And I was product manager for 7 years before I moved over into UX. And I've also found that then bled into all of my creative pursuits. I have to start with that very high level and, analogy of I want to go to the moon.
Right.
Okay. And, being able to then take that big idea and distill it down into, okay, the rocket's going to look like this and it's going to have this many seats,
Mhm.
and becomes significantly easier. So I've trained myself, both for my primary career and then my secondary, tertiary,
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's interesting that you talk about, kind of wanting to tell the developers, how to do it. And then maybe that's one of the draws of writing, at least for me, is, because I can be kind of like that too. And when you're writing, you get to make all the decisions about like
Mhm.
how you think it should be.
And then your characters go off and flip you the middle finger and do what they want.
Yeah, but you try.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes they go a little off base and you have to like corral them back or, go in a different direction. But, it still feels like you're
Oh
in
yeah.
the driver's seat, even if other people are actually driving. I don't know.
Yeah, I do have a little bit of control freak in me, and so I do feel like writing gave me that opportunity. And not in a bad way. I love being a control freak. It drives my family insane though.
Yeah, I can definitely relate. um, so you have a history degree with a minor in art and ancient linguistics, which is super cool. Um, has studying history or ancient linguistics or art like affected your writing at all?
In some respects, yeah. In other respects, I, paid those student loans and I'm still trying to figure out why. Um, but I wanted to run a museum when I first went to college. And so that was the way that I could get there, was to do my history degree and minor in art, minor in ancient linguistics. I still, can read and write 2 dynasties of Egyptian hieroglyphs, and I have a passing familiarity with Sumerian cuneiform.
Oh, that's
Um,
really cool.
some of I accidentally, I was talking with somebody a week or two ago, and I ran into my old fanfiction.net account and realized, oh, just first off, how awful the writing was. And then on top of it, I was like, yeah, but you know what? My anglicized Sumerian, that rocked.
That's funny. So what kind of fan fiction did you write?
Oh, I was steeped in Highlander and Buffy. I was a member of the Blue Boxer Brigade for Mythos back in the late 90s.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, I cringed when I forced myself to read through some of the stuff that's still out on fanfiction.net. And I posted it to my socials, and everybody's like, what's the link? I was like, you are not getting the link. You have to figure this out on your own, man.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, no, I never really got into writing fan fiction. I've definitely read some fan fiction.
My daughter, she's a teenager, and she was kind of laughing at me, cringing as I'm looking at my computer. She's like, what's going on? I was like, I'm reading my old fanfic. She's like, send it to me. I love bad fanfic.
Oh, that's awesome. So when you're writing, what is your creative process like? Are you a plotter or a pantser? for those of you listening who don't know what that means, pantser is just somebody who flies by the seat of their pants, kind of discovers the story as they're writing.
I like to refer to myself as a plantser now.
Oh my God, so do I.
I was a hardcore pantser for many, many years. And that is why I have so many not finished things sitting in my hard drive. And, but as you know, I started going, I need to get these done. I need to get these out. They've got to stop living rent free in my brain and on my hard drive. I started getting a little better about organizing and at least getting some high level outlines before I start writing. I still keep a lot of the pantser within. But yeah, if I don't have a full outline, I'm not allowed to touch it until I get something else done.
See, I will write an outline, but then I usually won't follow it. So then I'll have to like write a new outline when I'm like halfway in. So like I'm kind of plotting throughout the whole process. So that's kind of why I refer to myself as a plantser these days.
Yeah, I try really hard. And then going back to the earlier things, sometimes the characters are like, no, I do not want to do this. I want to do this. And I'm like, man, come on. Okay. If I let you do this, can we get back to the real?
Yeah. No, sometimes you just need to like write a side thing that you know isn't going to end up in the novel, but you're like, look, I'm just here, just do it.
Yep. Feel free, run free.
So with graphic design, you also have a BFA in graphic design. So does your graphic design inspire your writing at all? Or does your writing inspire your graphic design?
A little bit of both. I started some of the stories that I have in play because I was playing around with a book cover. And that just gave me some inspo to move forward with it. And then on the other side of that coin, I'll start like digging deep into different careers, and I've got a decent residual income from building out WordPress themes and posting them on like Theme Forest and such. Okay. And so I'll build that particular career's a theme for them, and then hey, at least I'm getting something out of it. It wasn't like just me farting around in Photoshop.
Right. No, that's really cool. Yeah, and I mean that's probably a cool kind of way to earn some residual income, to just sort of create something once and then you make money from it a long time. Well, I guess that's what we're doing as writers, sort of, in theory, but
I feel like there's a lot more blood, sweat, and tears in writing than there is in WordPress theme.
Yeah, that's true. With the WordPress theme, you like just kind of, I mean, there's a lot of work, yes. but it's not as, you don't have to like agonize over every decision.
That's very true. And I'm a fan of writing trauma, I've come to find. And I'm like, okay, am I working out some stuff without therapy?
I mean, isn't that what we're all doing?
Yes.
So you volunteered at Dragon Con for 15 years in the filk music track. So filk music, for those of you who don't know, as I didn't know before this, is defined as the music of fandom. So how did you participate in this, and what was the experience like?
I come from a family of geeks. So I went to my very first science fiction and fantasy convention when I was 4 years old. My parents, my mother and my stepfather, met at a science fiction fantasy convention. And there were, folks who would just go and take over one of the track rooms after hours and play music. And they'd be playing music about books that I loved and movies that I loved and TV shows that I loved. And I was, this weird kid, and this was the 80s. So it wasn't like, not this weird kid. Why are you here? This weird kid. Okay, if you're quiet and you're, not going to be, raising hell over in the corner, you can sit and listen. And so, as the years went on, you'd see, Weird Al doing parodies about Star Wars and things like that, where it was like kind of more mainstream of what filk is.
Mm-hmm.
And there are some pro musicians. For example, Mark Gunn actually lives just a couple of miles away from me here in Atlanta now, and he's one half of the Brobdingnagian Bards, and then a Celtic auto harpist in his own right, and he does shows all the time, all sci-fi, fantasy, and then traditional Celtic. When it comes to volunteering at Dragon Con, I was initially volunteering with the Apocalypse Rising track, because at that point I was also writing for a small press called 451 Press, all about the TV show Jericho.
Okay.
And they, were like, hey, we could really use some moderating help, and do you want to volunteer? And I'm like, sure. And my aunt at the time was helping out with the filk track, and they were super short staffed. And I stupidly said, sure, I can help in the evenings after I've worked all day on the AR track. The next year I did not make that same mistake. I just moved straight over to the filk music track. And 2 years ago, I became track director. We handle anywhere from 8 to 14 performers over Dragon Con week, all live shows. We also have what we call group sings, where all of the different performers, we usually crowdsource a theme via our social media, and they tend to write songs on the fly about that theme. We've had Harry Potter, Star Wars was the one that started it all for our group sings. And then this year, of course, everything went virtual for DragonCon. And a lot of the different tracks were like, oh yeah, we can pre-record stuff. And I'm like, I'm handling music. And these guys have, just been slammed with cancellation upon cancellations.
Mm-hmm.
We should do this live. And so I grabbed a bunch of prior performers and a few folks that we wanted to have come this year physically. And instead we put together 24 hours of content over Labor Day weekend, and did all but 4 of those hours as live. There were 2 hours of folks who had not, for one opportunity or another, not been able to come to Dragon Con as musicians, that I asked them for 2 songs or 10 minutes of content. And I just, cut them all together, edited it into a package, and it ended up being 2 hours worth of content. But yeah, we streamed across Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, or I'm sorry, not Twitch, YouTube. I looked at Twitch and went, no, that's just too much. And yeah, and it was such a big success that I guarantee we're going to have, at least some virtual content whenever we can all be in the same space again.
Right. Yeah, I think it will definitely be interesting to see how events like Dragon Con kind of change or evolve, like in future years, mm-hmm. based on, everything having to be virtual this year, like if that's going to become a part of it, or, it'll definitely be interesting.
Yeah. I mean, we had folks who, just have never been able to come to Dragon Con, get to experience at least a little slice of Dragon Con. And I have said many times over, if I didn't volunteer at Dragon Con, there are just way too many people. I don't know if I'd actually go as a fan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've never actually been to actual Dragon Con. I do just kind of walk around downtown during that weekend and people watch a lot, mm-hmm. but
people watching is so much fun. I mean, part of the joy of actually volunteering there is that I can justify getting a hotel room because my track runs super late into the evening, past when MARTA actually runs. So it doesn't really make sense to go home and come back.
Right.
And I make sure that I get a balcony so I can watch everybody out there on
Yeah.
my downtime.
That's awesome. Yeah. So has singing in general been more of like a hobby for you, or have you been in singing groups or bands in the past?
And when I was a teenager, my goal was to be in musical theater on Broadway. So I spent 7 years doing voice training in Broadway style. Um, and then I realized that I needed to pay the rent. Um, and, that kind of just sat in the back. And so most everything I do with singing is very hobby based. At Dragon Con in particular, we have what we call open filk circles. That's the majority of the time that I'll be singing in front of people, is to fill the holes and to, make sure that the open filks run kind of Bardic style like. And then also, since quarantine has happened, I miss my karaoke desperately.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I tried to do like some virtual karaoke once. It didn't really work out because like the delay, it was all weird.
Yeah. I've been basically milking every little ounce of karaoke out of Twitch Sings before they shutter the doors on January 1.
Oh.
I found it because of one of my other musicians. He's a very good friend. She's primarily on Twitch for her music. And she said something about Twitch Sings. And I was like, what is this thing? And she's like, it's karaoke. And I'm like, I am so there.
I'll have to check that out. That sounds really cool.
They are shuttering it on Jan 1 though. Sadly, I think they ran into rights issues with
music.
Oh
yeah, that makes sense. So like me, you have a lot of passions and obsessions, and I think all artists are driven by passions and obsessions to some extent. We all have themes that we return to again and again. For example, most everything I write has something to do with music. So what themes do you notice recurring in your work?
Trust, both building and breaking, and broken people. I did not start that way on purpose. It was actually pointed out to me by one of my aunts. She was reading some of my short stories, and she was like, God, you really do love broken people. And I'm like, they're interesting. And I realized that's just like, that's the continuous thread. There is usually something to do with the arts, whether it's expressed in music or in painting or in, writing, even with some of the career choices of my characters. That is always, there's a thread, but in some respects, it always gets tied back to broken people.
Yeah. I tend to write a lot about, I write a lot about music. I also write a lot about addiction. Like, just it seems like everybody in my stories has some kind of addiction issue, but in mental health too, I write about that a lot too. But and it's interesting that you wrote fan fiction. I find a lot of people that, have written fan fiction or read a lot of fan fiction or just really been involved in kind of like fandom in general. It's kind of like a different type of writer artist. I feel like we're all just kind of like geeking out all the time. And then that kind of just spills over into our writing.
Yeah. A lot of people, will kind of poo-poo on fanfic because, Mary Sue's and, writing the ending that you want and fan service and all that. And I was like, it was almost like, for me, training wheels. The world building was done. And I could just basically be set loose into the world building. A lot of it to kind of tie it back to filk, a lot of folks think of filk music as just parodies.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a ton of original content as well. But a lot of folks get into filk music and singing about fandom because they're your training wheels. Your melody's already there.
Right.
Because you're doing a parody of someone else's song. And it doesn't even have to have any tie whatsoever to the original song. And I'll go back to Weird Al, even though Weird Al has been very adamant that he does not write filk. He writes parodies that just happen to be sci-fi. I always need to throw that caveat out.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I definitely, I think of, fan fiction as like playing a cover, versus playing an original song, because like with the cover, it's like the skeleton of the song is already there. You can put your own, spin on it, or, your own kind of version, but it's like, the meat of everything you need is already there. I mean, I guess it's a little different. But I think, the people, like the authors that are very like, oh, no one should ever write fan fiction of my, I'm like, I would be so excited if somebody wrote fan fiction of my book.
Oh my God, that would be like, yay, I have made it. Somebody likes my world.
I know. I would be really excited. So you did talk about this a little bit earlier, but what are you working on right now? Just your book?
Primarily, I'm finishing up the final edits on Through the Lens. I'm looking at an early 2020 release. It was supposed to come out in 2020, as most of my writing group would constantly text me, and the universe laughed at me just like it did the rest of the world.
Yeah,
in 2020.
I think we all have that experience.
And yeah, I'm also I'm starting outlining. It's gonna for a YA romance series. It's gonna be my first true series, so I feel like I need to do a little bit more world building in that outline form. And I completely lay the YA romance series on my daughter's shoulders because of the fact that she is completely obsessed with K-pop. Mm-hmm. And a few years back, she had to have ankle surgery and was really lonely and bored as she was waiting to heal, and got me addicted to watching K-pop MVs. And like this idea just popped into my head, and I'm like, okay, this really deserves a series. Mm-hmm. So once Lens is out, I'll really like go heavy-handed into taking that outline for the YA series, and at least get hopefully out one book in 2021, maybe two. I don't know.
Right. That's cool. No, I was just curious, as you've, kind of studied history, have you ever written historical fiction, or is that something you ever plan to get into?
I've got a couple of completely pantser books, and I call them books, but yeah, they're like 35K in words before I lost the thread completely, that, do kind of call out to me. My initial focus when I was working on my history degree was ancient cultures, as my minors suggest, but then I kind of fell full force into between the wars, World War I and World War II European theater. And so I've got a couple of World War I occupation stories that have been kind of going, hey, and nudging me. You should probably go back to them. So maybe.
Awesome. So are there any, books or TV shows, movies, music, etc., that you're really into right now?
I have fallen completely in love, and I'm super late to the game, of Court and Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, her series.
Oh, yeah.
It is trauma central, but holy crap, I love it. I like devoured everything within like 2 weeks that had to do with Court of Thorn and Roses. And then my very favorite outside of direct Dark Tower lore the Stand miniseries. I actually ponied up the money for yet another streaming service so I could watch The Stand.
I've heard good things about that. Which one is that on again? Is that
CBS All Access?
CBS All. Yeah, I know. There's so many. It's like, oh, I gotta get another one to watch this show.
Yeah, I've been fighting it because of the fact that I've been, constantly, Discovery's really good. Star Trek Discovery's really good. And I'm like, that's nice. I'm not buying another streaming service. And then the second that they released the trailer for The Stand, and I'm like, here's my money. Just take it, please. I mean, I did love the 90s The Stand miniseries. I really did, but I was very disappointed in their Randall Flagg, the most irredeemable Jack, on the planet, and he is so unredeemable, but yet I simp over him so hard. So, to see Alexander Skarsgård playing Randall Flagg, and so far it's been small, but I haven't been disappointed.
Oh man, he plays. Oh
yes.
Man, now I'm gonna have to watch it.
So I mean, I've even brought my teenager. I was like, we're gonna watch The Stand now, and she's like, okay, what do I need to know? I was like, just experience it.
Awesome. Okay, so I have kind of a big question that I ask everyone. I'm sure you know what it is if you've been listening, but why do you think art is important?
Art in all of its mediums, it gives us the opportunity to empathize and get past the othering of people that we as humans tend to do, where we group this, that, and the other. I will always fall back on, there was a large exhibition that the Nazi Party put on called Degenerate Art to show how bad modern art was before World War II. I can't remember the exact year, but sometime in the early 30s. And that was really where seeing this big, huge photo book of it, all of the different voices that they considered to be quote unquote degenerate. And so many of these pieces are so well known as pieces that could bring people together. So it's always been at top of mind that you can give voice and give the ability to empathize with someone who you may not have anything in common with via art, whether it be painting or writing or anything.
Right. No, that's really cool. Yeah, I definitely like that idea. So where can people find you and your work?
Well, my author website is my name, amberhansford.com. And then my web design and development side hustle is on speakinginvector.com. I'm also a shameless early adopter. So if you just go search for Amber Hansford, 90% of the time I'm on some social media platform, usually raising a little bit of hell.
Awesome. Oh, and I can link to, your site on my findcreativeexpression.com. So yeah, everyone go check that out. Yeah, well, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. That was great.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun chatting about this.
Yeah. I always like to, geek out with people and talk about writing and art. I had so much fun talking to Amber, and I hope that you guys found it useful as well. Coming up on the next episode, I'm going to be talking to musician James Huey. James is super cool, so you definitely want to tune in for that. Thanks so much for listening, and I guess by the time it's the next episode, it'll be 2021. So Happy New Year, everyone, and be safe, and I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Find Creative Expression podcast. Please take a moment to leave us a review on your favorite podcasting platform. You can find me on Instagram at Sarah E. Crawford or youtube.com/Sarah Crawford. Also find me on Patreon at patreon.com/Sarah Crawford to support the podcast for just $1 a month. And that's Sarah, S-A-R-A, without an H. I hope you've been inspired today, and I'll see you in 2 weeks for the next podcast.